You think this is just a hard season. You think this pain is punishment. But what if I told you it's a test, a sacred, fiery, heaven-ordained test, meant not to break you, but to build you for something your mind isn't even ready to comprehend? You're not being overlooked. You're being examined. You're not being buried. You're being refined. God is stretching you now for a calling you wouldn't believe even if He told you. And if you stay with me until the end of this message, you'll see this isn't just a struggle. It's an audition for destiny. Because when God is preparing you for something big, He doesn't just give you the blessing. He tests you for it. Not to see if you'll pass by performance, but to see if you'll endure with integrity. Because a calling that shakes hell needs a character that can carry heaven. And if you've been wondering why everything in your life feels like it's under pressure, it's because you're not being punished. You're being trusted. Trusted with fire. Trusted with silence. Trusted with seasons that don't make sense, but shape you into someone who will make eternal impact. You think this wilderness is a detour, but it's actually a training ground. You think the waiting is wasted, but it's actually where heaven watches how you move when no one's applauding. This is where your yes becomes expensive, where obedience costs everything, where faith is no longer just something you preach. It becomes the floor you stand on when everything else collapses. You're being tested, not for the life you have, but for the life you've been called to steward. And that kind of life can't be built on convenience. It must be built on conviction. You're not waiting on the blessing. The blessing is waiting on you to mature, to deepen, to become the person who can hold what you're praying for without letting it destroy your soul. That's why it feels like everything is being stripped. That's why people are walking away. That's why the doors you thought were guaranteed are slamming shut. Because God isn't just giving you a platform, He's giving you weight. And weight requires strength. Strength that doesn't come from talent, but from testing. Strength that doesn't come from visibility, but from hiddenness. Just like Joseph in the prison, just like David in the field, just like Moses in the desert, just like Jesus in the garden. Every destiny is preceded by pressure. Every assignment is preceded by agony. You're crying out, God, why am I here? And heaven is responding, because I'm preparing you for there. But you can't carry there unless you're faithful here. This is where lions are fought, where giants are trained for, where crosses are embraced before resurrection is revealed. You're being tested in your silence. Will you still serve when no one sees it? You're being tested in your pain. Will you still praise when you're bleeding? You're being tested in your disappointment. Will you still trust when the miracle doesn't come the way you expected? These aren't random struggles. These are holy trials, the kind that refine your motives, that purify your faith, that expose your attachments, that crush the idols you didn't even know were there. Because if you're going to carry glory, you cannot be ruled by ego. If you're going to release healing, you cannot still be bitter. If you're going to lead others, you cannot be led by fear. God is not just preparing a path for you, He's preparing you for the path. That's why it hurts. That's why it's slow. That's why it's stretching parts of you didn't know could stretch. Because He's not just giving you the promise, He's making you become someone who can protect it. And yes, it feels like you're breaking, like everything around you is shaking. But what you don't realize is that God is shaking everything that isn't Him. He's letting people walk out who can't go with you, He's letting systems fail that were never meant to sustain you. He's allowing you to be stripped down to the core so that when He builds you on something that can't be moved. And when the winds come, and they will come, you won't fall, because you'll know how to stand. You'll stand not because it's easy, but because you've already stood through fire. You've already stood through betrayal, through confusion, through the nights where you said, God, if this is what calling feels like, I'm not sure I want it. But deep down, something holy kept you. Something sacred whispered, don't quit. Don't walk away. Don't waste this pain. It's part of the process. Because the testing isn't here to take you out. It's here to take you into the place where God trusts you with things that others never saw coming. You are being tested for a calling that eyes haven't seen, ears haven't heard, and hearts haven't imagined. It's not just ministry. It's not just influence. It's a move of God through your life. But before He moves through you, He has to make sure He fully owns you. Not just the public you, the private you, the one who responds to offense, the one who wrestles with control, the one who still battles insecurity when no one is watching. That's the one He's testing. So, if it feels like you're in the fire, know this: gold is refined there. If it feels like you're being crushed, remember, oil only flows from olives that have been pressed. If it feels like you're walking blind, just trust. Faith isn't faith until you walk without seeing. And if it feels like heaven is silent, take heart. Teachers are always quiet during the test. Don't mistake this silence for absence. Don't misread this pressure as punishment. God isn't trying to destroy you. He's revealing you. He's exposing what's weak, so He can rebuild you strong. He's confronting what's shallow, so He can deepen your roots. He's showing you what you're made of, not so you'll be ashamed, but so you'll be anchored in truth, anchored in His word, anchored in the unshakable reality that He who called you is faithful to finish what He started. But finishing doesn't come without testing. Crowns don't come without crosses, and anointing doesn't come without agony. That's why you're here. Not because you're being punished, but because you're being prepared. You're being prepared to carry glory and not crumble under it. You're being prepared to see miracles and not seek fame. You're being prepared to lead others without losing yourself. And that kind of preparation takes pain. It takes pruning. It takes the kind of crushing that doesn't feel holy, but is. And if you'll stay in the fire, if you won't run, won't numb it, won't quit, it will do its work. It will shape you, seal you, sanctify you, until what comes out is not the old you, but the called you. And when that called version of you rises from the ashes of what you've survived, you won't even recognize yourself. Not because you've become someone else, but because you've finally become who you were always meant to be. The testing didn't change your identity. It revealed it. It stripped away every false layer, every label someone else placed on you, every limitation you once believed was permanent. What was left? The pure, refined, fire-tested image of a vessel heaven can trust. God didn't bring you this far to humiliate you. He brought you here to anoint you. He let the crushing come, not to destroy your dreams, but to separate your calling from your comfort. Because you can't be called and still cling to convenience. You can't walk in power and still live for applause. You can't carry a mantle from heaven and still try to fit into the mold of culture. No, He's breaking you out of the boxes people put you in. out of the cycles that tried to define you, out of the fears that held your voice hostage. Because your voice carries weight now, your prayers shake things now, your footsteps echo with kingdom authority now. Why? Because you've been through something. Because you've suffered and stayed. You've wept and still worshipped. You've been disappointed and still said, God, not my will, but yours. That's not weakness. That's what makes hell tremble. That's what gets heaven's attention. You didn't just pass a test, you became a testimony. And the people around you won't understand it. They'll look at your life and wonder, how did they get there? They won't see the nights you cried yourself to sleep. They won't know about the days you almost gave up. They won't feel the weight you carried in secret. But heaven saw it all. Every prayer, every choice to stay when you could have run, every time you forgave when you wanted to fight, every time you released what hurt you so you wouldn't become bitter. Heaven didn't forget. God didn't miss a moment. And the reward is not just coming, it's already building. Because the moment you were tested and didn't break, something shifted. You graduated in the Spirit. You stepped into a new realm of responsibility. And with that comes revelation. You're not just seeing differently now, you're hearing differently. You're not just moving differently, you're discerning differently. You're beginning to sense when God is shifting something before it even happens. You're beginning to speak with boldness you never had before. Why? Because the fire burned away everything that wasn't supposed to stay. You don't need validation now. You have vision. You don't need attention now. You found assignment. You're not walking around asking for a title. You've already been touched by God. And once you've been touched, once you've heard the whisper in the middle of the storm that says, I still choose you, there's no going back to surface level living. There's no settling for shallow when the deep has called your name. And the deep has called your name. That's what this test was always about. Not to punish, but to position. Not to weaken, but to weld your soul to something unshakable. God didn't test you to see if you could survive. He tested you to show you that you're ready to lead, that you can carry oil and not leak, that you can stand in the tension and still speak life, that you can endure wilderness without losing your wonder, that you can walk through the valley of the shadow of death and still fear no evil. You've seen too much now to go back. You've been through too much now to doubt. You've been refined too deeply to be moved by things that used to shake you. And yes, the enemy sees it too. That's why the warfare has been relentless, because he knows something sacred happens after the test. He knows anointing comes after agony. He knows authority follows obedience. And the moment you realize the weight you now carry, the game changes. You're no longer reacting to everything around you. You're governing it. You're no longer begging for direction. You're walking in it. You're no longer asking, God, are you still with me? You know He is. Because only a God who was present could have walked you through what tried to kill you. Only a Father could have held you that close while stripping everything else away. Only love could have tested you like this and left you more whole, not more broken. So don't resent this season. Revere it. Don't rush past this moment. Receive it. Because what's being formed in you is rare, and rare things take time. Diamonds aren't formed in daylight. Oil isn't pressed in public, and mantles aren't handed to the comfortable. They're forged in the quiet crushing of surrender. You've been through it. You are going through it. And the fact that you're still here, still breathing, still believing, still becoming, that's the evidence that the test is working. You're not just being tested for a calling you can't imagine. You're being proven for it, proven faithful, proven stable, proven surrendered. And what God can trust, He can elevate, not in the way the world promotes, but in the way heaven entrusts. You're about to carry something eternal, something weighty, something that doesn't entertain, but transforms, something that doesn't fade with trends, but shakes atmospheres. And when it happens, when the doors begin to open, when the influence begins to rise, when the favor starts flowing, you won't be impressed by any of it, because you'll remember the fire, you'll remember the tests, you'll remember the cave, you'll remember the tears, and you'll say with trembling confidence, God, if you can use this, use me, and He will, because you've been tested, and you didn't quit. And when God begins to use you, it won't look like a spotlight. It'll feel like surrender. It won't be a stage. It'll be a battlefield. And the glory won't go to you. It'll pass through you. Because the ones who've been tested deeply never take the credit loudly. They've bled too much to think they built it. They've lost too much to think they earned it. They've been broken too many times to believe this is their own doing. That's why God can trust you now, because the fire killed your pride and birthed a posture of worship that can't be faked. You're not just walking into calling, you're walking into consecration. You're stepping into sacred territory, the kind where demons tremble when you pray. Not because your voice is loud, but because your heart is clean. The kind where heaven moves, not because you perform, but because you carry presence. This is the oil that costs something. The kind that doesn't come from conferences or clout, but from crushing. The kind that drips off of people who said yes in the dark, when it hurt, when it was lonely, when no one said thank you. You know what it is to be misunderstood, to obey God and lose people, to give everything and be overlooked, to pray with tears no one ever saw, to keep walking even when you were limping. And that's what qualified you, not your perfection, your perseverance, not your strength, your surrender. You don't need applause when you've heard God whisper, "Well done," in secret. You don't crave titles when you know you've been marked with fire. And yes, the fire is uncomfortable, but it's also necessary, because what you're being called to carry will attract pressure. The assignment will provoke resistance. The blessing will demand boldness. And God doesn't want you to break when it arrives. He wants you to thrive under it. That's why He's allowing the weight now, so you learn to walk under glory without collapsing. That's why He's allowing the tension now, so your roots go deep before the fruit goes wide. You've cried, "God, it's too much." And He's whispered, "But you're built for more." You've prayed, "Lord, take it away." And He's replied, "No, I'm using it." Not because He's cruel, but because He's creating something eternal, something holy, something that lasts longer than your name and reaches beyond your lifetime. Because your calling is not just for you, it's for them, for the ones still bound, still waiting, still wounded. And they won't be healed by your polish. They'll be healed by your process. That's why you can't hide your scars. They're the evidence that healing is possible, that resurrection is real, that God still restores. That's why you can't run from your story. It's not just a testimony, it's a weapon. You're going to preach from the places that once broke you, You're going to set people free from the prisons you used to live in. You're going to carry keys you didn't even know were being forged while you were walking through fire. And when that moment comes, when heaven says, "Now," you won't need to announce yourself. The oil will speak. The weight will speak. The atmosphere will shift. Not because of hype, but because of holiness. You've been tested in secret, and now you'll walk in power that only comes from purity. You've been stretched in silence, and now you'll speak with a sound that hell can't ignore. You've been crushed with questions, and now you'll carry answers that weren't learned. They were lived. This is not your reward. It's your responsibility, but it's holy. It's weighty, and it's worth it. Every tear, every lonely night, every prayer that seemed unanswered, every door that closed, every wilderness you wandered through. It wasn't meaningless. It was meticulous, designed by a father who's too loving to waste pain, too wise to rush the process, and too faithful to forget what you've walked through. And now you're ready. Ready in a way the world can't see but hell can't deny. Ready in a way that has nothing to do with how you feel and everything to do with how you've been formed. Ready not because you're confident in yourself, but because you're confident in Him. You've been emptied of everything you used to depend on. And now, all that's left is a vessel, willing, open, dangerous, and the devil knows it. That's why the pressure has intensified. That's why the warfare feels heavier, because the enemy sees what's coming. He sees what you're being prepared to carry. He sees the doors about to open, the lives about to be changed, the fire about to spread. And he knows, once you step into it, there's no going back. Once you realize who you are, there's no shutting you up. Once you start walking in this level of fire, there's no stopping it. So hold on. You're closer than you think. The test is almost over. The heavens are about to open. And when they do, it won't be subtle. It won't be small. It'll be the kind of move that makes people wonder where you came from. But you'll know exactly where. The wilderness, the cave, the floor of prayer, the crushing place, the refining fire. That's where you were made. And now you're ready, not for popularity, but for purpose. Because you've been tested for a calling you couldn't imagine. But God, He imagined it all along.